Wyrd Realities explores the paranormal, preternatural, and supernatural worlds that surround us. Here we delve into those topics that challenge us to think outside the limitations of realism, where we test the boundaries of imagination and are forced to think outside the confines and restrictions of what is normal. We are the creators, the writers, the artists, and the insane. Welcome to our Wyrd Realities.
Welcome to the Wyrd Realities newest segment, Wyrd Murders, Mysteries, and Mayhem. I am author Hadley Thorne, and I'm here with my co-host, Behavioral Health Specialist Jenn Salmons. And joining us tonight for the episode on serial killer John Robinson is fiction author Jaime Hernandez and voice actress Finley Jones. How are y'all doing tonight?
Hi, everybody.
Hey, doing good.
Hey, doing good. How are you?
Good.
Pretty good. So what did y'all think about Mr. Robinson?
That's a very crazy case. It's amazing how many times he had problems with the law and still continued to commit crimes even before he started committing murder.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, Finley, would you like to give some background? Because I know you were talking about you had deep dived into his childhood.
I read some. He grew up in, I think I'm saying this right, Cicero, Illinois.
Cicero. It's Chicago.
And do what? Say that again.
It's in the Chicagoland area.
Yeah. So he grew up in Cicero, and he was, even as a kid, he was pretty arrogant. Like one of the guys he was in scouts with said that he was not afraid to tell everybody that he was superior to them, but he was smart and did well in school, and he was accepted into the Quigley Preparatory Seminary, and at one point aspired to be a priest. And I was reading that in a book. Let me get my glasses, because I'm blind. Let's see.
Your cheaters. Do you have cheaters or do you have actual glasses?
I have actual glasses.
Oh, okay.
Let's
have
see.
The cheaters.
Achievers. That's awesome. Let's see. Yeah. So in 1957, I like how the cherubic faced Robinson seemed to live up to his boast when he was accepted at the prestigious Quigley Preparatory Seminary. The Chicago Tribune even reported the story, citing his, quote, scholastic ability, scouting experience, and poise, end quote. This was quite an achievement for a working class Cicero boy, and the Robinson family was very proud.
And let's stop there and discuss, well, Jenn, why don't you tell us who John Robinson is?
Well, he was considered the first internet killer, which I don't know if that's really accurate, but he used the chat rooms and other things to kind of lure women to the Kansas City area. In order to, he was considered slave master was his handle. That gives you an idea of where he was at. He liked to be the dominant one. A couple of women that did come here from other states, some of which he let live. He had women all over the city in different hotel rooms. At one point, in doing, sadomasochistic stuff. One woman decided to move here from Michigan. That was his last victim. And the mom kept contacting him, and he said to her that she was off with an attorney and went on a 1-year trip, and mom was like not believing him. So, but basically he put some of these women, I should say, because some have never been found, some of these women in barrels on his property. Now, he was a guy who he'd go around all these hotel rooms and these like apartments that he had, or long stay motel type situations. He'd put them up in there, and he'd go from like place to place. And then he'd be home by 5 o'clock to be, you know, super dad and husband and look like a normal family man. And he kept this up for several years. There's a time period where he did serve time. They were suspicious of him. They put him in jail for like probation violation. But, and they knew that there was a woman and her child that was missing. And that's when he contacted the FBI. He's like, this is bigger than just, he's a con man. Because he was already on probation for being being a big con artist. He would embezzle money with wherever he worked. So he was kind of a petty thief, but he actually was really good at like scamming people out of their money. And there was a mom and her daughter who he promised to enroll in a private school here and pay the tuition and pay for their expenses.
Hey guys, will y'all check your mute mics?
Oh.
Okay, that was weird. Everybody went on mute.
Yeah.
That was strange.
Okay. So you guys didn't even hear half of what I just said. Is that accurate?
That would be accurate, yes.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So I don't know where I left off. I was like, boy, they're being awful quiet as I'm telling about this stuff. Okay. So I don't know. Where did it leave off?
We heard all but like the last 30 seconds or so.
Okay. So he was a con man up until a probation and parole officer in the county, seriously, the county right next to me. Like crazy. My parents live in that county, if that tells you anything. I'm like 5 minutes from them. The probation and parole officer at that place, he was on probation or parole for many other things. They knew him as a con artist. And what got the probation officer's attention, and thank goodness it did, was that he was pretending to be some sort of philanthropist, good guy, going through this organization called Birthright to find young women who were either pregnant or, and he was saying he was working with his church. He went to the local hospital, and the hospital, when the probation officer called him, actually said, you know, as an afterthought, hey, you know, we did refer one woman to him and we haven't heard anything further from her. Well, that was the woman, Lisa Stacy, who had the little baby girl that he ended up putting up for adoption and giving to his brother and sister-in-law. They came from Chicago to pick up their baby that he, because he was such a great businessman, was able to get for them for $5,000.
Oh my God.
Jamie, what did you think about the situation with the baby?
Oh, that just gutted me. Just the thought of taking, I mean, let alone what happened to the mom, but for the baby to then be raised by these other people as a mom, that just, I can't imagine what Lisa was, you know, if she was already dead or.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
she was. Actually, they believe that she was murdered, and then it has pictures of the baby on his lap hours after he had killed her.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And I can't imagine what it was like for her then to find out when she was 15 years old.
Yes.
What had happened and where she, you know.
And she knew him as Uncle John. I mean, there was all these things that she was starting to learn about. She's like, you know, my Uncle John is being accused of these terrible crimes. And then she goes on and they show pictures of Lisa, and the baby's name was Tiffany at the time. She no longer goes by Tiffany. They renamed her. But Lisa had named her Tiffany, and she's like, that's me in those pictures with my birth mother that he just killed. So her Uncle John, like, she's figuring out, oh my God, I was stolen from my mom who was murdered by my Uncle John.
Yeah, one of the things that I saw was that she, as an adult, has filed suit against the hospital that the program that he was, you know, I guess implementing with them. Yeah, that she sued them because, you know, in good faith, her mother went through that program to help her, you know, her situation because of the hospital.
And he basically, he went to them and misrepresented himself. He was like, I'm a member of this church. I'm a leader in this church, blah, blah, blah. And that's why they gave him anybody to work with, because they believed him.
Well, why wouldn't you?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. He's like, I'm going to set her up. And he basically got her like a stay lodge kind of thing. Like, you can pay daily, or you can, I think you can probably pay hourly at some of those places, but like, and put her up in there and like for a week. And she didn't pay for the bill. He did, but he took her somewhere and killed her and took the baby over to his house and had them fly in and look like the family hero. Cause here he, you know, got this baby because of all his great connections in the Kansas City area.
Wow.
It's pretty sick. I mean, what he did. And there is a picture of like the whole family and his brother and sister-in-law, and the baby is sitting on John's lap. And he just killed the mom.
That's just so creepy. And that's just, I can't imagine how the baby, well, at that point, her name, or they named her Heather Tiffany. But at that point, she was Heather. I just can't imagine what it was like for her to, as she gradually figured this out, and then to have the DNA confirm it and, you know, learn the whole story.
Well,
that, you know,
and then his brother and his wife.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine how they felt.
Yeah, they thought,
not only did he, you know, murder the mother of their baby, but he took money from them to do it.
Yeah, I mean, they raised her. They thought they legitimately adopted her, and they raised her as their own, and had no idea. I mean, how do you even come to terms with something like that?
They didn't figure it out. Actually, she figured it out. The 15-year-old figured it out before her parents did.
Yeah.
And she, you know, she should file suit. Absolutely. And I actually, it was through Truman Hospital. I found out, and I've been to Truman Hospital. Like, it's just crazy to me that there's so many places around here that he utilized. There was, you know, he was not only in Overland Park, in Olathe, in Kansas City, all of these places. These are places I travel all the time. And so it was just fascinating to me as I'm watching this. I'm like, oh my gosh, how did I not know this? Well, at the time I was getting married and I was pregnant and had a baby. It was like 2000 to 2000. And they actually did the raid on his place to find the first barrels. And that was in 2000. It was June, I believe, of 2000. And, you know, they had an idea that the bodies were somewhere, but they could have been buried on the property, but the dogs found the barrels right away. And there was 2 of the barrels there. They did find the most recent victim, which was the one that came down from Michigan. And he tripped himself up. He gave the mom his cell phone number. And the FBI was hoping that he would disclose something, but he, of course, did not, and stuck to the story and said, you know, I wouldn't worry too much. She's probably just on vacation, you know, having a good time, and she'll contact you, I'm sure, soon. One of the things, I don't know if you guys read about this, but he would have future victims of his sign cards, sign different things to look like they sent them at a later date. For example, the girl from Michigan, the woman from Michigan who came here, he's like, I need you to sign these birthday cards for like your niece in a couple months, and because you're going to be too busy with me being my sex slave, I guess. She's also supposed to do work. She's also supposed to be taking care of his dad, which I don't even know if his dad existed, but that's the story that she told her mom. And basically he'd have her sign cards and letters and different things in order to look like she was still alive. And he would pay somebody to, for example, with that one of his friends' maid was going to Mexico. Can you mail these for me from Mexico? So it would be post-dated, so it'd look like she was still alive.
That's so crazy.
I
mean, girls, that is a huge red flag.
Yeah. When he had them sign blank pieces of paper too, things that weren't like cards and things like that, just blank pieces of paper.
Yes, because he wanted to make sure that he'd have her signature, so nobody could say, she's dead. Well, he would just postmark whatever mail he sent with that on it, so he could say, see, she's alive.
Yeah, and some of them were supposed to be from all over the country or all over the world, but they all had Kansas City postmarks. And the woman's mother said that they were uncharacteristically mistake-free. If her daughter had typed those letters, that's not how they would have looked.
Right. The letters in particular, and he would type it up at the top, like he'd have her sign down at the bottom.
Right.
But he did hire someone to go out to California. When he didn't hire them, I shouldn't say it like that. But if people were traveling, if he knew of somebody going somewhere, he would pay them to take those letters and mail. He's like, could you mail these out for me from Mexico? They did find that out. And from California, that was the other place.
Yeah, that's not surprising to me at all. I mean, for
he was
him
pretty
to be
smart about it. I mean, yeah, that takes some real forethought. Like, I want her to be considered alive as of this date. So I can say, see, it can't be me. Yeah, I saw her back in June, but this is October when she sent that letter. Or that card for her niece.
Wow.
Heather and I have talked a couple of times about this, but like, we so easily could have ended up in barrels. Because they never really did find his first victim, which they know of. The first victim was the woman who, her name was Paula Godfrey, and she was fresh out of high school. And she went and found in the paper that basically he had put out this information on employment, and it was like world traveler, and you're going to be very busy. I'd like you to be attractive. I mean, you couldn't get away with that today, but I mean, it's funny to me because that was one of the things. He's like, you're going to be an executive assistant and you have to be willing to do all these things. Well, basically he said she had to go to a training in Chicago. He went over to her parents' home where she lived. She's fresh out of high school. This is her first job. And said, okay, I'm going to pick you up and we're going to go to Chicago for this training. Never to be seen again. Her parents tried to say, this is not like her. We don't know where she's at. We don't know what happened to her. They reported it, but she was an adult at that point.
Well, it just breaks my heart.
Right.
I know.
I mean,
and they believe that was his first victim, but I mean, you do that first thing off the bat usually, but boy, oh boy, I mean, there's got to be more. He's not exactly somebody he's the guy that's not gonna ever tell on himself.
So do you think that the first time he killed was an accident, and then he was like, oh wait, that was fabulous, I need to do this again? Or was he?
I think he's an opportunistic predator.
Yes, I would agree.
I don't think that he's someone, to me, he's not a typical serial killer. This is just my 2 cents worth. To me, he is someone who he's disposing of loose ends. He's not getting a thrill. I mean, he'd probably like to be spanked and all that, but, it's not about the thrill of the kill for him. I think it's more about getting the money and,
I do think he liked being in control. He was actually the one that
yeah.
was the dominant. He liked to make them bleed. The woman who came down from Michigan, the hotel room that she stayed in for the first time she came down, she stayed for a month and got to know the maid. And there was blood all over a towel. And she was like, I'm sorry, I had really heavy periods, blah, blah, blah. Well, I'm pretty sure that he was cutting or doing something on her. Like, he'd have her tied up. Actually, the FBI, when they first started looking into him, they found out that he'd got a room at let's say Extended Stay America. And they got the adjoining room right next door to try and listen in. And he's like, any other time, if we would have heard the things we heard, the screaming, the moaning, that hurts, he goes, we would have busted into that room, but we didn't want to go against the investigation. And some women he didn't kill.
Right.
He went around, and one of the things I found interesting was the district attorney that was talking about it was saying, I think that he was extremely sexually active in a way that I don't think any of us expected, because he was just going from place to place, taking these women and tying them up in chains and whips. Did anybody catch the reason, one of the biggest reasons he got caught? A lot of women didn't want to report him.
He slapped one of them.
Well, no. This is very interesting. There was a woman from Texas that he convinced to come up here. She had a bunch of sex toys. He stole them. She went and reported it to the police. And she was like, I want my shit back.
Oh my gosh.
Well, who was the one that he had the fight with and he slapped her? And she went and she was going to turn him in. And she asked the desk clerk at the hotel who he was. And that's when she found out it was a different name than the one he'd given her. And that's when I think she got suspicious. Which one was that?
Wait,
the sex
okay,
toy lady?
It might have been, because he actually did say, come back and I'll give them to you when you come back. And he didn't meet up with her. I mean, there was a couple of things he did, but then she went to the police and she was dead serious. I'm getting my shit back. He stole hundreds of dollars of her sex toys and she was pissed off.
You just think of all the things that could have gotten him busted and brought him down. That's what it was.
Yeah. And she actually was like, I'm going to testify against him. I'll do whatever you guys need me to do. But yeah, he took my shit. And I just thought it was so, but he also made all kinds of promises to her. So when he made those promises, I'm going to have you come back. I'm going to have you live here. You can just keep your stuff here. And then when she came back up, she's like, I didn't have any money. I didn't have any way to live. And I totally relied on him. But then he didn't show up and I couldn't be with him. And then he took my shit on top of that. So she was like, oh no.
He took my purple dildo.
He did. He took her purple and her red, damn it. She had handcuffs. I mean, she was naming all this stuff that she had. That's not cool. You're not taking my stuff.
There's so many things wrong with that. I don't even want to touch on it.
Yeah.
But oh goodness. But yeah, he was sick and twisted.
I think it is amazing that it was 1985 that the probation and parole officer is really the one that started connecting, hey, this is bigger than just what we're thinking, guys.
Well, and is he the one or she the one that connected that there were 2 missing persons associated with him?
Yes. He contacted Overland Park Police, which is where he lived. But it was on the Missouri side that he was his probation and parole officer here. And he was like, hey, what's going on? He's doing this birthright thing. I mean, he suspected him all the way back in 1985, and he served time during like the late 80s, early 90s, because they wanted to violate him. They knew something was wrong with him and that there was bigger things happening, but they couldn't prove it. So they got him on probation violations to get him sent back to prison. And then when he got out, there's big chunks where we know he was doing shit during that time. It's just he's not going to tell us what he did. But
and he has been convicted of 8 murders. Is that right?
I believe.
And they only found 6 bodies or 5 bodies.
Well, yes, and part of it is they found those 2 others, the mom and the daughter, in the 2 barrels, and they were expecting them to be the victims that they knew of.
They didn't even know about them, right?
Yeah, they didn't even know about those people. And there was tons of people that he was with that he was very abusive to. And he'd get these women that are in this vulnerable position and give them drugs. And I know that Hadley, you and I had talked about this, but he had stuck a gun in one of them and said, do you want to have a blowout, or something to that effect? The district attorney over in Overland Park was the one who actually prosecuted him. And he said, there is no one I feel more deserving of the death penalty that I've ever prosecuted than him.
Wow.
The things he was doing to women was just horrible. And all that he goes, you can't even put a figure on the number of lives that he's devastated. Because even the women that he'd keep held up, like he'd have keys to their, like if they had like an apartment, it was off of Truce, which I know you guys don't know it, but just imagine like your worst street in your every city. Well, Truce is ours. Like it's a really bad street, and it was in this terrible neighborhood, and he'd have these little girls in there basically, and he'd go over there and have sex with them whenever he wanted to.
So he was truly a slave master.
Yeah.
Well, we talked about him being a confidence man, which to me that's what he is. He's just a big con artist. And I'm going to say that in the 80s, not that I know, there probably wasn't the healthy awareness of BDSM that has kind of risen since the whole 50 Shades of Grey phenomenon, you know?
Right.
And it's probably dealing with a lot of broken women who probably had a lot of issues. And I mean, he's just a shark in the water.
Yeah.
You know, going into those chat rooms, I mean, they're looking for someone to take that role with them, you know, and that's what he would do. He would take that role. He would, you know, I'll fix your life. I'll take care of you. Come move here and I'll find you a job, and, you know, I'll give you a place to live. And I mean,
well, the internet, that was the 90s more when he started that, because he was putting things in the newspaper, like job opportunities. And, you know, these girls are, you know, like the one that was the very first one that they know of for sure, you know, she's thinking, I've got a great job opportunity. Oh my gosh, this is so exciting. I'm going to Chicago and I'm going to have a training, and she's never heard from again. I mean, he killed before the internet. And those are just the ones that we know of.
So,
I mean,
and I'm curious, what is the wife's take on all of this? I mean, I didn't read
that's a very good question.
I didn't read anything about her and whether she suspected, or
I want to say that I saw something with, they were saying that he had done something to her at one point.
Yes. I mean, he definitely had been abusive, and she had tried to leave him at least once that they have documented, but did get back together with him. And I was thinking, he's so narcissistic, there's no way he'd be okay with his wife leaving him, because, well, she was kind of like a beard for all of his escapades.
Yeah.
Well,
He looked painfully normal on the outside, and a successful businessman by stealing
Going to church.
Yep.
So the book that I was reading in, the prologue to the book was in the days or hours right before the raid on the farm or wherever it was. He had all the barrels, his property.
Yeah.
And it seems as though the author caught Robinson's thought process, and how Robinson thought that he was so much smarter than the police, and that he was one step ahead of them. They were not going to figure him out, and that his arrogance had him going around and buying his hot dogs and chicken wings and hamburgers and all that at the grocery store, and the police are following him around. And that prologue ends with the cops watching him through the long range lenses of their cameras going, he is just as cool as he can be. He doesn't care. Or he thinks.
Okay, her name is Linda Robinson, and I just actually found this, and I'm glad you asked about this. Tearful wife of accused serial killer offers her testimony. So she did testify against him in 2002. I'm so glad we didn't end up in barrels, Hadley.
Well, I read that she didn't divorce him until 2005.
I don't think she could. I don't know, but she did testify, so that part's good.
It may have just been the complications of whoever, him going through trials and stuff she couldn't do it till then.
Yeah.
He had to have lived in just immense fear all the time. If he's the way that I'm envisioning him, she had to live in fear all the time.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. A lot of people were very suspicious of her. Like, how could you not know what he was doing? He was running around all over the city. But again, he'd come home at 5:00 every night and go to his kids' recitals and soccer practice and you name it. So
yeah,
he looked painfully normal.
Don't they always, though? I mean, they don't look like serial killers.
Well, if I'm being honest, that was my thought. How could she not know? On the flip side of that coin is, I don't live in that kind of a nightmare. How can I possibly know what she was living through? How could I know the fear that she was in? And she had to have been, even if she did know, as scared as she was. I mean, he obviously had an immense hold on her.
Yes.
Well, they married when they were so young when they married, and they had their kids in pretty quick succession. To get married that young, I'm sure she had no clue what kind of person he was at that point. But to be young and naive and in love, and then gradually over time, his real personality to whatever degree would have become apparent to her. And that how women can be victims in marriages, and they're afraid, they don't know how to get out. I would think that she probably didn't know he was actually killing people, but he could have had her scared enough that she did know more, and but she was afraid to leave or afraid to tell anyone.
Right.
Well, and she had his children.
Exactly.
That just complicates things. If he says you will never leave, you won't live if you try to leave me and take my kids. I tend to believe somebody who says that just out of fear. It may not be true. People say that stuff, yeah, I mean, abusers said that stuff all the time, kind of thing. But he was actually somebody who actually knew how to do it and could.
Right.
And she probably saw some of his crazy. Plus, he was constantly in trouble with the law for embezzling. So you don't jump necessarily from, he's a con man to he's killing women and putting them in barrels. Like, I wouldn't do that. He was taking the Social Security check, or what was it the alimony check, or what was
taking
the
the alimony
from the
check of
mom
that
and the daughter?
librarian.
Yes.
It was the alimony check from the librarian from the prison. And it was the Social Security from the mom of the disabled daughter.
Yeah.
And that's,
Yeah,
I mean, that was just terrible. I mean, not only did he, do what he was doing to the mom, but then he killed that little girl and she didn't do anything. She was just in the wrong place at the wrong time.
And wasn't a baby that he could sell.
Exactly.
Disgusting.
It is really disgusting. Because if that was in 1985 that he did that to Lisa Stacy. And I actually do remember seeing the picture of her with her daughter on her lap. And that's the picture. Like, I remember seeing it on the news, but I swear to you guys, I mean, I'm sure it was covered. But I seriously had zero attention span, I guess. I was busy getting married and having kids. I don't know. But it's so odd to me because it was right here in my backyard, basically. And he's from Chicago, which I also am from Chicago. So I was like, there's two connections here. And his brother still lives there. That's where Tiffany, the daughter, or Heather Tiffany, now lives.
Well, kudos to her for sticking with her parents and recognizing they didn't have anything to do with that. Because I'm sure that was a very hard time when all that came out for all of them.
Oh, I can't even imagine.
That was my next question. And you answered it. Whether or not they still had a relationship.
Yeah, she said that, they raised her. They were the only parents she ever knew.
And they were innocent. Everything they thought they
had no idea that he had done that.
Well, and I wondered, how did he get those documents forged with the court, the judge, the court papers, the signatures, all that? How did he get that looking so real?
I don't know what happened. I'm going.
What happened to her? Boudreaux is biting my toe. You need to stop that. There she is.
I'm so sorry, guys. I got booted.
I was just telling them Boudreaux is biting my toes with his little milk teeth. So if y'all hear me squeal, that's what that is.
So, yeah, I mean, and he was considered the first internet killer because he was on there as slave master, and he was also someone who was very active in the BDSM stuff. And I mean, if there would have been a Craigslist back in 2000, I think he would have been on it. You know what I mean? Like, there was the Craigslist killer that came shortly after that, but he was using the internet as soon as it came out for his own gain.
Well, I remember when all that happened, hearing about it on the news and stuff. But I mean, I know just myself that I have met people who packed up and moved to be with somebody they met online in a chat room. And I just think, how naive people were when the internet first came out, that we were, because it's really changed, you think, since the mid, was it no, I guess it was like late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah. that it really became big. And that was the first time I even heard of people dating and meeting people online like that too, and people leaving their families and moving across the country. Like, you heard about it, but you didn't really know a lot of people. But I started to know a lot of people that met.
Yeah,
online
I've known
dating.
people that I know a guy that moved from Canada, married a girl in Mississippi. I mean, I've known a lot of people that have done it, and it's
I know now, but that back then it was very rare. I mean, especially in the 90s, and if you heard that, you kind of went, "Oh, that's crazy." You don't even know that person. But then it was like everybody was doing it. It seemed like like all my friends were like, I mean, I was getting married, so my coworkers or friends that were single, they were online dating, and I didn't know that was a thing, because that wasn't a thing when I first started dating. It really wasn't. I mean, even though I was on the internet, I don't know about you guys, but I can go deep diving into the internet even today. But the first time when I was exposed to the internet, I was like I'd go off into a million different directions. I was supposed to be doing research on something for a paper, and next thing I know, I'm looking at, oh my gosh, look at all that. They have hair ties of every color, and it's crazy. And I'm like, how do I
cat can has a cheeseburger.
Right. Like, anything that could get my attention, I'd click on it. I was the clickbait. I was like, okay.
I never got into the whole chat room thing.
I didn't really either.
It just wasn't my cup of tea. Now I have a sister that thought it was awesome. She would go into chat rooms and argue with people because she could. I mean, I
have a friend like that now. She just gets on to fight with people, and I'm like, I don't understand that, but okay. Gets her blood pressure all up, and she gets in Facebook jail occasionally.
Yeah, so I just never got into the whole chat room thing. So that's probably a good thing for me. I got into enough trouble, not having to have chat room temptations.
Well, that kind of started with phone. Do you remember they used to have those phone groups, like call, and you guys can all talk and you can meet a new set of people? I did that. I mean, that was probably in high school, my freshman year. So
I've never even heard of that.
I haven't heard of it either, but I was also sheltered, so
same.
I probably wouldn't have been allowed to even look at it if I knew of it.
And I never met the people on there, but we just get in there and you find a room and they were talking about something and you just join in the conversation. It was like the first type of chat room.
My point is that we were very naive when all of this started, because it hadn't been done before, and now looking back, it's amazing more people aren't in barrels.
It really is.
It's just so risky to meet people now.
And it's kind of off topic, but kind of not. When the movie Fear came out with Reese Witherspoon and
that's
Mark
such
Wahlberg,
a good movie.
It really is a good movie.
Yeah.
But my roommate, I was a club hopper. Loved going to the club and loved meeting people. And that's going to be the innocent way that I say that. And she would say, I need you to watch this movie right now because you need to stop meeting people. And I watched it, but it's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
You're just meeting them face to face instead of online.
It's just a different type of predator.
Right.
Well, Heather, that's why I say we should have been in barrels. The neighborhoods, the places we went at 17, 18, and 19 are crazy now. I think back, I'm like, I would not want my child to be going there. I can't believe we did it. I mean, and it's lucky that we aren't in barrels, because we did trust people in a way. It's naive. I mean, it's that age, you're stupid. But some of those men were 40 years old. Certainly shouldn't have been talking to us.
Invincible.
Yep. Jamie, you're awfully quiet.
Oh, I I was going to say something before when you guys were talking about the chat rooms in the beginning. I remember the first time I discovered one. Well, the first time I went on the internet, I didn't even know what to do. I was just like overwhelmed, like what's here? And I somehow stumbled into a chat room. And the first thing anyone said to me was a dirty comment. And I'm like, okay, I don't understand what this is, but I'm not interested. It was just my very first experience with the chat room. And then I didn't pay much attention to them.
Do you remember when everybody used AOL, or was it AIM?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you would randomly get those pop-ups of somebody wanting to cyber sex with you?
I
You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
I'm sure it happened, but I didn't see. I wasn't even on AIM. There you go. Mine was, more. I just would find myself down a rabbit hole of something that had nothing to do with why I got on the internet in the first place. And I thought, ooh, this is dangerous. I'm up at 4 a.m. looking at shit that I shouldn't be when I was supposed to be doing research. I just knew it was fun, but I didn't really interact with people. I actually didn't interact until much later. I don't know if you guys remember when Big Brother came out and you could do the live stream.
Oh yeah.
That's what the first time I had an experience in the chat room. And I didn't know what LMFAO was. So I asked. And I swear to you, they said laughing my ass off. Well, laughing my, effing ass off. And I wrote back, I said, don't be mean. I'm just asking. I'm sorry. I'm stupid. I'm new to the chat stuff. They said, no, that's what it stands for. So, yeah, that tells you how ignorant I was of the whole thing. I was like, wait, what? And there was a whole bunch of acronyms. I kept going, what's that mean? Be right back. I didn't know what BRB meant. I was like, wait, what? Okay. So, yeah, pretty naive. That was in the 2000s.
No, I didn't know what any of that meant right away either. It took a little time to figure it out. Some of them I'd ask, depending on who I was talking to. But, it took a little while to figure those out.
It's funny because you said you Googled it. I didn't even think to Google. Like, I didn't even know. That wasn't even a thing in my head. Like, oh, if you want to find out something, Google it. That was not even on my radar. I just was asking my chat room, and I wanted to know what they were talking about in there. And I was like, what's that mean? What's that mean? Oh, my God. LOL. What the hell?
We're showing.
Yeah. Well, I apologize. We kind of got off on a topic about the internet, but he was considered the first internet killer. Because
and probably not the last, and probably
definitely
not the
last.
One.
Yes.
Well, and one of the things I found interesting was that they really don't think they know how many people he killed.
Yeah,
and he won't tell. Why won't they tell? I don't understand. You're in life in prison. You're waiting to be, go on death row. Why won't you just own up to what you did?
Because as long as there are questions, he remains relevant.
Oh.
Yeah.
Good point.
Definitely. And if he tells on himself for other things, it just solidifies that he'll never get out. Like, I'm sure, still thinking he can get out, which most serial killers are looking to either not get the death penalty and live, or they don't want to make it worse by telling more things because they already look bad. And what was his big game? His big game was looking like the good guy,
Right.
being part of Birthright. And
it just,
but in his case, he already got the death penalty. So for him to not tell them anything else, I think part of it is just that how evil he was or is. And part of it is, how he thought he was so much smarter than the cops and everything, that it gives him some measure of, what's the word? I can't think of the word. It feeds his ego
some control.
Yeah, that he knows and they don't know, and they'll never know unless he tells them, and he's not going to. Like, he feeds off of that.
Yes.
Right.
And Suzette Troughton. I'm going to say that right. Suzette Troughton was the one from Michigan. And they said that when they listed off the names of people he had murdered, when they got to her name, that was the one the mom had talked to him on different occasions. They said his face went white. And he goes, "You guys are making a big production about this. This is not that big of a deal." And they were like, "Yeah, it is."
Wow.
Wow.
I think he thought he was going to beat it. That's the other thing.
Well, they always think that, don't you think?
Oh, yeah. But I mean, I think with Suzette, he really screwed up because he still talked to the mom occasionally. And she had a way to get a hold of him, which
Now, isn't
they
that
were
the
like,
one
"What?"
where, like, he would talk to the mom and, like he was to the girl's boss?
Yeah. She was going to be an
Sleazy.
executive assistant, but she was also going to take care of his dad, which I don't even know if a dad was in the picture. I think he just made up dad.
Crazy.
And she was like, "I'm just so busy taking care of his dad." Because she didn't want her family to know she was into S&M and those kind of things. And I think there was a lot of women who didn't tell on him because of that. Like, I don't think he had a line, but these women, he'd hurt these women, but they didn't want to tell. Like, they had agreed to get into this relationship with this dominant figure. And what are they going to do? Go to the police and say, "Hey, by the way, he didn't stop on the safe word and he hurt me and said he was going to kill me and all kinds of things." Well, I don't know if I'd go to the cops with that story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't believe that the woman.
Well, I mean, the thing
that
about
was a
the
sex
whole
choice.
BDSM, the thing about the BDSM lifestyle is a lot of it is fantasy. So
Yes.
where's the line? And that's the problem with when you add someone like him to the mix is, he's crossed the line. It's no longer the fantasy, and those women weren't prepared for that.
Well, and the thrill of killing was part of it. Like, he would go up to the line and I'm sure injured a lot of women.
Mm-hmm.
And then was like, "I don't know how I'm going to get rid of this body, so maybe I shouldn't kill her." But she's not going to tell on me because she doesn't want to tell people what she's been saying on these chat rooms. And
and the thing is, a lot about BDSM again is psychological.
yes,
It's getting inside someone's head, and these women, like I said, they're vulnerable. So not only is he putting himself in a dominant position, but he's getting inside their head, and they're sharing those things that make them tick with him because of the trust that's established in those types of relationships.
Well, and a lot of them are signing contracts too.
Mm-hmm.
When they enter those relationships. So the women that he most likely hurt that never came forward, I mean, there's a piece of paper somewhere where, they agreed to all of these things for the relationship. And going into, being afraid to go, how do you tell the police this or that? And then, they sign something.
You signed this piece of paper, and so you kind of asked for it. I mean, you can imagine the shame behind that.
Yeah.
And that's he was banking on that and did.
Yep.
Well,
they said that there's got to be more victims, and there was such a time period where they weren't watching him and they weren't noticing, some of the things that they didn't connect at all. So kudos to them for finding, connecting some of these different things, because like the Overland Park police officer called his counterpart in Olathe, where the second victim had disappeared. So, I mean, they did connect some of it, but it wasn't until the Missouri probation and parole guy contacted the FBI and said, "This is big, and there's a baby missing." Like, it's not just like one or, a couple ladies disappeared and they went off on vacation. No, there's baby that's missing.
Well, it makes you wonder about all the other missing people.
Yes.
There's a lot of missing people out there.
And I think he was definitely responsible for some of those.
Yep.
We just will never know how many.
I'm surprised more women didn't come forward when he, got caught. I guess
not
it's
just
banking on that.
I think there's so much shame with it. It was something where, like, we think of it even now, but back then it was really crazy. Like, you went across the country to meet up with somebody who was gonna, be your slave master, and you didn't expect for things to go badly. Like, you know what I mean? I would have said, that's crazy. Don't do that, but.
Well, ladies, I'm going to stop it there.
Okay.
Let's wrap it up. Jamie, why don't you tell everybody what you got going on? Is she there?
Uh-oh.
Jamie?
Sorry. My computer is freezing up. So I'm currently working on the third book of my Chronicles of the Undead series, hoping for a winter release. I'm also working on 2 anthologies, which I can't name just yet, but I'll be sure to announce them everywhere once they're out. And other than that, I'm working with Wyrd, which has been amazing. And you can also find me, the Jaime Hernandez Fan Club on Facebook and Horror Writers Inc. on Facebook.
Awesome. What about you, Finley? What you got working on?
We are going to have a panel in the next few weeks, and we're going to discuss the Army of Thieves movie for Wyrd Realities. Watching Wyrd Realities Inc. That'll be fun. We'll have some of our weird friends on with us and some authors from Horror Writers Inc. And then other than that, just hanging with you, lovely ladies and gentlemen, from time to time.
Talking about terrible men.
What about you, Jen? What you got working on?
I am working on this with you. This Murderers, Mystery, and Mayhem. The triple M's. Triple M's.
3M. Well, guys, that's going to do it for tonight's episode of Wyrd Murders, Mystery, and Mayhem. And we shall be back in, the week after next. And I don't know who we're going to be discussing then, but you will find out soon enough. But until next time, stay weird, and we will stay weird with you.
Before you go, be sure to leave us a comment and let our Wyrd team know how they're doing. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow us to get notifications when we add new content. We are adding new content 3, 4, and sometimes 5 times a month. If you want to keep the conversation going or would like to learn more about our panel of hosts, be sure to check out our link tree. That's linktr.ee/Wyrd Realities. It links to our official Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and website.